Hey, OK Fixer here. I'm making this video in very tight spaces, so I have to do it as best I can with the room I have. So if you get bumped or something like that, I'm sorry. What we're going to do here is I've got a problem with the 44 Model A John Deere, and the problem is low oil pressure. Now, as you recall, in older videos, I rebuilt this engine, honed it, put new rings in it. I put Model 70 connecting rods in it that have insert bearings instead of babbitt's. I adjusted the clearance on our crank and did everything I could to make oil pressure, even going as far as to cranking the oil pressure screw all the way down, and I will explain that later, to only have low oil pressure. I do not have medium to high oil pressure, and I know the problem. And so I'm going to explain the problem to you because this very problem happened on my 45, and I couldn't figure it out for the longest time because I had done the same thing and I still didn't have any oil pressure until I saw what was going on. So let me explain this to you. Here's the flywheel. This is the starter. Underneath this starter is the crankcase open inspection plate, and that's where we're going to get to the oil pressure relief system, and I'll show you what I have found. Because this old girl didn't have any oil pressure after I kind of walked away from it, she's sitting on bare rims, and I've robbed the carburetor and mag off of it. For the 45. We're going to start working on this and making it a operational tractor again. I don't know how long it will take, but I know the first thing I need to do. So we're going to look at the oil pressure problem. Now, if you do have a Model A or a B or a G, I don't know. I imagine they would be the same in the AR as they would be in the D. If they all have the canister oil filter at the bottom. I'm going to show you what I think is the problem with this and what was the problem with that one. I have drawn a rudimentary diagram here, and let's see if I can get it all in. Let's back up just a little bit. That ought to help. Okay. The crankcase is right here, kind of. Well, it's like right. The transmission's here, and the end of the crankcase is right here. The crankcase is like right there. And there's a oil drain plug right here. Okay. What you have here is a bolt, and the bolt is yay long, and it unscrews, and you pull it out, and I'll show you, because that's the first thing we have to do is drain the oil, pull that plug, and pull the oil filter out. And it has an element filter. It doesn't have a spin-on filter. It has an element filter. The bolt goes up into the pressure relief valve. Okay. I was wondering if that was going to keep beeping. And the bolt goes up into the pressure relief valve. Originally, the top of this cylinder, or this cylindrical deal, this little can, as it were, if you picture a coffee can that was upside down, it has a flat surface, okay? And the oil pressure relief valve is mounted on top of it. And what's happened over the years is this bolt has been cranked down crank down, and what it does is it bows this. It's just sheet metal that this is mounted on, and it bows it down. And oil pressure, there's a gasket underneath it, and oil pressure weeps off here and here. It was exactly that way on the other tractor. I don't figure that this one would be any different. I'll bet you that's what's wrong with it. Here's your oil pressure relief valve. Your oil pump is over here, and it supplies oil pressure to this, and then the oil pressure goes down through the filter. It filters it, and then it goes out to the bearings. And I think there's one that goes to the governor section, which oils the head and such like this. And there is a left and a right that goes out to the main bearing. So I think there's 4 lines go to this. 1 that comes in and 3 that go out. On the very top is an adjustment screw, and there's a little flapper of thin metal. And as you back this out, it allows this little flapper to bleed more oil. And when you screw it in, it closes the little flapper, and it doesn't let you bleed any at all. I have mine completely closed, but I have this oil leak here and here, probably. We'll see if the can's bent. Probably is. And that's why I'm not getting the oil pressure that I want. Even when you take and loosen this bolt up, the oil pressure even drops lower, dangerously low. So that's why I stopped using this tractor, is because I haven't figured out the oil pressure problem until the 45 gave me problems. So that's kind of how it works. And so let's look into this and see if that is indeed the problem. First thing we're going to do is dump all the oil out of it. Yeah, first thing, you take your wrench. It's 1 1/4 inches. And what we're going to do is we'll take this off there. A lot of the times what happens, why that gets bent, is people crank on it. Oil's nice and golden. That's good to see. Not a lot of water coming out of it. That's another good thing. They will crank on one of these, and it'll pull that down and really put the Zoidberg on that. See if our pail will fit underneath there. Probably fit underneath there if I had some tires on it, but it doesn't, so I'm going to have to do this the best way we know how. We're going to have to add it. Let's see here. There's our filter element. And our bolt, it has a bolt but has a nut on the other end. And what's happened is it's pulled it down is what it's done. It's pulled it down. So we'll have to probably pull that stud out of there. But let's get that. I don't think... I'll find another bucket to drain that other oil in. I'll be right back with you. Hey, take your wrench. And I don't know what size that is. There's nothing marked on it. 5/8. 5/8, I guess. See how much water's in this. There you go, a little bit. A little bit of water, not a lot. I hope she slows down. I only got 11 quarts. Well, let's see what happens. Yeah. Okay, tell you what I'm going to do. Put my finger up in that. And now I'm going to bring this over. Because there she goes. Yeah, she's at the end. Okay. Now we can work with it. We got the oil drained out of it. Okay, next, pretty straightforward. We'll have to take our ground strap off and these 3 bolts, our 9/16, and then our 5/8 power. Originally this was positive ground, but I've got it switched around, and I've got 12 volts just going right to the starter, going to the 6-volt starter. This starter doesn't care whether you feed it 6 volts or 12 volts. And it doesn't care whether it's positive or negative ground. It still runs the same way. Don't know why, but there is probably a formula for it. Let's take this off. It's pretty simple. And then it will expose this plate. So you kind of have to pull your shroud away, and then your starter comes off. And then we're going to take this plate off there, starting with the oil filter or oil filler hole deal there. Yeah, all the bolts are on it. Let me whack that with something. Let's have a look here. Let's see. There you go. Now that right there is our oil pressure relief. And so what we're going to need to do is swing that crank out of the way. And there's 3 bolts on the top that hold it on the top of that can. And we're going to have to take all those fittings off there as well. And I'll bet you that can is dished. So we'll have a look at that next. I can't begin to describe what kind of bastage it was to pull those 4 fittings off in that little space. You have to have your crank in just such a way. And then also there's 3 different sizes. These 2 here are the same, and then there's 2 different sizes there in typical John Deere fashion. Let's take those 3 look like 1/2-inch bolts out, and then our unit should come out of there. Okay, I finally got this evil demon bastard apart. Train. And I'll tell you what happened. I thought, and it's been a while since I've taken one of these apart, but I thought I would be able to take these 3 bolts out, right here, and this whole thing would be screwed to the can, but it's not. This is the top half, and I'm going to take these bolts out that I can take out, and there's a spring that goes in here, and goes like that, and then the whole thing fits down into the can. It sits on the top of the can It looks like a coffee can upside down, just like I drew. Okay, in order to get these bolts out, these 3 bolts on the other side of the can, this washer, which is the bottom side, or the top side, I should say, of the filter, the filter goes up against it, has to come off. It has to come off this. Well, it slides off from there, but right about there, there's a little hitch in it, and it was all I could do to get it off. And I'll tell you how I did it. I'll show you how I did it. I'll pick that spring up in a minute. What I did is I got a couple of blades, cutout knife blades, glass blades, to cut a windshield out with, and I took them out of the deal, and I fidgeted around in order to get them up underneath this like this, and it was a pain in the ass too. And then I clipped the vice grips on it, and I was just pulling like crazy, and it finally come off of there. I tried a couple of pieces of wire, like coat hanger, to put up there, but they would just bend. So what we'll have to do is we'll dress this up a little bit. There's got to be some kind of hitch there. Probably it's been squeezed so much that it's bulged or something like that, and so we're going to need to fix that. Okay, and this is the portion that attaches to the can, and you can see it's flat. It's flat, and it's a flat block. Okay, and it has a little thin gasket. But I want to show you the can. Okay, so let me get to that, and I'll be right with you. See, originally I thought when I took this engine apart that it was bearing clearances that were giving me problems, and it's not. And this holds true. Focus. With the 45, I fixed the 45 this way, and the 44 is the same thing. So you might have a B or a G or an A, older or newer, that the same. Focus. Focus. Okay, if you look at the very top, right there, you can see the indentation where it's been pulled down. And that's supposed to be flat, and obviously you can see it's how it's dished in. I can see it anyways. I don't know if this is going to show up very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find something flat and round and get up underneath it with a jack and jack that up out of there ever so slightly. It's pretty thick, so I don't know how much I can jack it. I'm going to be very careful because I don't want to push the can out. So, alright, I got a 2x4 and a bottle jack up in there. The 2x4 fit perfect, and I turned it this way. And I've able to kind of jack the crease out of it a little bit, and I think if I cut a nice thick gasket, I think she should be okay. Better than it was, that's for sure. Okay, let's do some gasket work, and we'll put her back together. I've heard a lot about low oil pressure. I've been reading about it on the John Deere forums for these engines, and a lot of people say, oh, it's your gauge, and oh, you got to change your oil, you need 40 weight oil. And so far, this situation here, what I've got, this is 2 for 2. So I wonder how many else out there, however many other people out there have these tractors with low oil pressure, because that nut's been cranked down to tighten up the oil filter, and it's pulled the pump here, or not the pump, but the relief valve away from the oil can, and caused a leak between the oil can and right here. I wonder how many. So I don't know. Anyways, I've cut a couple of gaskets. Let's see here. Like this. It's going to be like this. Yeah, like that. I know it's not perfect, but it'll work. And this one, like I said, it's not perfect, but it'll work. Finding gaskets for this is just buy some gasket material and cut it. This is a little bit thicker, which means it's not going to matter, is what I'm saying. If you did get it a little thicker, it would lessen the effectiveness on the spring, which is on the opposite side of this, and this essentially just holds this little flap down, and the little flap is a little piece of spring steel, and the oil comes up out of here, just kind of, so more oil, I guess, would be flowing through it. So I mean, more oil, in my opinion, would be better. I did a little grinder job on this. It doesn't look very pretty, but by God, I won't be putting hooks in there in order to try to take this damn thing off again. Geez, that was insane. I worked on that for a couple of hours just trying to get that out of there. So let's clean this all up with a little brake clean. I'm going to glue put a little ultra copper, not wads of it. I'm just going to put a little film of it, so when it squeezes it sticks it really good. And let's see here. Probably what I'm going to do, how I'm going to get this on, is I'm going to take this gasket and put it on the bottom and put screws up through it and into the can, and then as it squeezes down, my screws will stay in the gasket because I can screw them up in it, if that makes sense. So I can sit this whole thing down there, get up underneath, and kind of line things up and screw it up in there. I hope. So we'll see. Okay, there's our widget. Pressure relief. And I put the top on there, and you can see I just got just the smallest amount of ooze, and I'm going to, before I put oil in this, I'm going to set overnight and let that gasket maker set up completely. And how this works is there's oil comes in this big line right here, and it goes out this hole through the filter back in, so it's filtered, and then it comes up to this portion right here, this top portion, and there's a little piece of spring steel right here, and if you see, I can move it like this. You loosen this bolt up and you crank it down, and it puts more pressure on the spring, and it doesn't let it bleed off. So that's how it does it, is it bleeds off. The larger one right here, this goes up to the front, to the governor case. This oil's the governor and the head and whatnot, and the one here and one there go to the main bearings, left and right. In 47 they changed this, and they routed it on the side, on the passenger side of the engine block, and there's a hole, an inspection deal that you can get out, and you can unloosen this little bolt and tighten this up. And that's where it needs to be, because in order to set your oil pressure, you have to take the starter and then inspection plate off, back on, off, on, off, on. You have to put starter back on, start it to see if it's right. Essentially, if you're building one of these that is a 46 and earlier, I suggest that you leave the governor housing off and get your bearings all together and everything, your main bearings, and put everything together. Put a drip pan under the front, and then use a drill to go down and if there's a big rod about this long that goes into your oil pump, and run your oil pump with a drill and set your oil pressure, and that way you don't have to take the engine cover off a dozen times in order to put a slight tweak on that to get it in between medium and high on your oil pressure gauge. That's just my thought. Okay, let's go outside and we'll put this on. We've got a gasket, and we're going to use this here Ultra Copper, and we'll clean it off with some brake clean. Doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, but it, you know, anything. This is one of those deals that it's not like that Volkswagen. It's you know, if you're close, it's okay because it was meant to be worked on in the field, kind of a. I mean, it's a precise instrument and everything, and what I've done, cutting gaskets and stuff like that, it's okay. That's fine. You know, it's better than some people. You know, oh well, let's see here. They got low oil pressure. Well, I'll run 90 weight in the crankcase or something like that. You know, so yeah, I do what I can. This is doing this because this is the cheapest thing I can do to this tractor right now. The tractor needs a $300 carburetor, about $60 to $90 worth of tune-up parts, and $1,000 worth of tires. So it's this right here is way deep into the engine. It's probably the hardest thing. All the other stuff is just throwing money at it. So I want to fix this because A, I got nothing to do, and I got no money to do it with. Ha! If you look down in there, I have the gasket on there, and then I have the 3 bolts and washers going up through the gasket, and I have some sealant on the other side of that gasket. And what you want to do is you want to use yourself a good socket, and the difference between a good socket and a bad socket is when you put your nut in a good socket, or you bolt in a good socket, just the nut or just the bolt part goes in. It doesn't go completely all the way to the bottom, and there's no threads left. All the threads are at the top. That's the difference between a good socket and a bad socket. Well, you know, and if it doesn't work like that, stuff yourself a piece of paper in there so most of the threads are there. You're able to get your hand up in there and turn this at the same time, and yeah, it's a mess. So okay, next I'm going to put some sealant on that, and then I'm going to put the widget on it, and I'm going to tighten the bolts up on the other side, up from the bottom. Okay, I've got all the 3 bolts up underneath the can tightened up. It was a spectacular bastard to get all of them. I used a screwdriver and kind of moved things around a little bit. I made sure my lines were bent exactly where they need to go, and that way they kind of sit right in the pockets of those where they're supposed to go, and it doesn't set it askew so far. It doesn't set the valve askew so far, and it makes it much easier to bolt up. It looks like we got quite a squeeze underneath. You could see in the 2 oil holes where that goes into and out of the oil can, there was some some of this sealant that came out of it, and I took a screwdriver, a small screwdriver, and I went up in there and cleaned that out, so those holes are clean. Of course, I'm going to let this set overnight before I try to crank on it and put any oil in it and crank on it, see if we have any oil pressure. So next thing I need to do is put the oil filter on, and I'm probably going to put a little sealant on the bottom of that cap so I don't have to crank on it so hard, and get those 4 line nuts on and tighten those up. Whew, what a mess. Then I'm done till tomorrow. Alright, I've got all those tightened up, and I've got my oil cap on and my filter, and okay, well, I'll see you tomorrow because I'll have to let that set overnight. I've put things back together and we're ready to crank. I've taken out the spark plugs, and if you notice, they're a little black. And they set up quite quickly. Okay, why? Well, it's because it's too fat. Why is it too fat? I mean, I think I got the carburetor adjusted just right, and the float's not sticking and it's not overflowing. Well, the same thing was wrong with this, and this was full of bees. So I put some screen on it and cleaned it all out. This is your air filter deal, your air intake, where your air intake goes. All right, there's no, on this one, there's nothing stopping the mud daubers from going up there and building nests. And it's at the top, there's not a hole there. So you have to take this apart, cut it off. I know. And well, it's been cut off before anyway. So, and then clean out all the bees, and then put it together and put some screen over it with some spot ties. In order to get this off, John Deere thought it would be most fitting for you to take the medallion off the front pieces. Oh, of course, the steering shaft out, and this piece off also. So, or you can reach up underneath there and dingus with the bolts that you'll never get to. It's easier to take it all apart. These things were never really easy to work on. They were easy to work on, but it wasn't made for you to. I want to say it wasn't made for you to take it apart. It's just got a lot of steps for you to get to it. Okay, this is one example right here. I have a battery in it. I'm going to sneeze. And the starter on it. And so we're ready to go. And we'll show you what kind of oil pressure we have when we crank it. And it's not gaining anything more. And of course it doesn't want to crank now. Let's get to a better position here. Let you see that. Okay. That's special. Yeah. Okay, let me put this down for a second. Occasionally this gets a hangnail on it. Yeah. There it is. And it doesn't want to engage into the gear. Of course, I don't have my foot on it either, so. Okay. So we do have oil pressure, but not enough. So I'm going to, of course, I had that all apart, and I don't know where I had the setting at. Unscrewed it. Had it where I thought it would be. That's the whole situation with this. Now, you have to take battery cables off, starter out, the plate. In order to get the nut off, tighten the little gizmo up to put a little bit more spring pressure on there so you get a little bit more oil pressure. Okay, we'll do it. I'll be right back. First you have to loosen this screw. And then you tighten this one. I think that's 5/8. This design is straight out of the Atomic Wiener's handbook. Well, I'm going to crank this down. I'm going to have to get in there with two hands, but that's essentially what you do. And then you tighten this back up. But this is what you want to turn down, and it puts more spring pressure on that little piece of piece of spring metal right there, and it keeps it from coming up, and it delivers more oil pressure. Actually, it was oiling, because if you notice here, there's some oil runs coming down the crank, so there was oil getting to the crank already. So yeah, let's tighten that up. Okay. Yes. Just made it neutral. I didn't change anything, so okay, let's give it a shot, see what happens here. Okay, that's going to be a little bit too much, but I took 10 zip 3, 4, 5, 6, so I probably took 3 or 4 revolutions of that bolt. So I'll have to get back in there and loosen it up. But I fixed my problem, because the last time I was in there, I cranked that all the way down, I didn't get anything, and I was getting very low oil pressure. So we're in the right park. Okay, so we're doing good. Good. Well, that's how you adjust your oil pressure on this beast. And I noticed when it was cranking, you could feel the whole thing going ha 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 ha, like, because this tractor bounces up and down like a rabbit when it runs. I think the crankshaft's bent, but you know, that's for another video. It's like, what else could be wrong with it? What's the worst thing that could be wrong with it? Oh yeah, the crankshaft's bent. It's just never ending kind of a thing, but it's always hopped up and down like a rabbit. So that one over there, decidedly less hopping, and I've done everything, tried to make sure my plate was on right, and I think somebody was goofing around with it. The driver is the opposite side of the flywheel, and it's the it's a dampener is what it is, so it, you know, there's not so much, there's a lot on this flywheel, but and there's got to be a little bit something over there too, so it's weighted and it's marked where it has to go. And somebody had it completely out, and I thought, oh, that's great, that's it. And I turned it around, it still hopped up and down like a bunny. And probably somebody was in there because they thought, yeah, same thing I did, but I think they figured out that the crank was bent and was time to sell this thing. So anyways, I didn't buy it, I traded it. So I still think I got a better trade than what I had. Okay, we're going to take the air cleaner off on the next video, and that's going to entail taking a lot of this stuff off. And, you know, when I get back down into this, I'll loosen that up and we'll fix the oil pressure proper. But I just wanted to show you this and get that out. Well, I've got a little politics for you next. So this would be about the time to shut this off if you don't want to hear the politics about the coronavirus. So I'll give you a little bit of time, and I will give the I'll think of it in a minute. But anyways, if you want to shut this off, this would be the time to shut it off if you don't want to hear the politics of the coronavirus. And I'll catch you on the next video. See you guys later. Okay, this is where you can turn it off if you don't want to hear my rant about this. I've got quite a bit to cover, and I made some notes too, so I wouldn't hem and haw so much. You turn it off if you don't want to listen to it. And for those trigger bots, you're the ones that want to turn it on right now. Okay, first thing I want to tell you, I'm not ashamed or embarrassed about my country. And I'm not ashamed or embarrassed about American exceptionalism or capitalism. The socialist left hate, blind, evil hate capitalists. They hate us. The fact that the economy is based on the free flow of oil, that's what the economy is based on. Free flow of oil at market prices. Prove me wrong. I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not embarrassed or ashamed. I'm not ashamed of the Constitution or my Bill of Rights or my First Amendment right. Freedom of speech. I'm not ashamed of not choosing the gutless, easy path of liberalism. I'm happy to be a conservative. A lot of you people, listen to me, you people, a lot of people who vote for the left don't even know they're conservatives. They don't know it because they've been told they weren't, and they are. They believe in the American way. They believe in freedom. They believe in the Bill of Rights. They believe in raising a family and working hard to get what you want. A lot of them don't even know they're conservative, but they are, and they still choose the gutless path of liberalism. I'm not ashamed of my rifle to fend off a rogue government, or my Second Amendment. I'm not afraid of my American Christian heritage. I'm not ashamed of my American Christian heritage. I'm not ashamed of the Founding Fathers. And I'm not ashamed that I have the Democrat Socialist playbook at my fingertips. I know exactly what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. Because they run the same play over and over and over again, expecting different results, because they are insane. I am ashamed of ass-hat liberal socialists who live in my country that are protected by the Bill of Rights, and who, while living in my country, take advantage of everything and are trying to tear down America in the name of fairness. I think you can all go live in another country. Have a nice day with that, because when you whip out your Bill of Rights, they'll whip out your sword, their sword, and cut your head off. Think about that. America's the last free country. You can't practice some of the stuff you do here. You certainly can't practice any kind of homosexuality over in some of those countries over there in the East. They'll kill you. That being said, I heard today about the shocking, incredible, outrageously insane breaking news that the Mueller investigation was a scam, that the Steele dossier was bogus, and they set George Papadopoulos up, and Rosenstein was lying. I've known about this for 3 years, and I've known about it for 3 years because of this. I know the blind hatred the left has for Trump. And it's about getting rid of Trump. It's about two things, actually. One is getting rid of Trump. Two, the next one's a little more harder to explain. But you got to understand, in 2016, the left lost, okay? And the left losing to anyone, let alone Trump. When Clinton was running, they literally shit their pants. They become clinically insane. I'm not kidding you. People dedicated their lives to the next phase of Obama bin Biden and the secret offshore accounts and destroying America in the name of fairness. All right? Trump coming in and draining the swamp just put them into a spiral. He's just reversing years and years and years of embedded social liberalism. It's just insane. Okay, so that's why I question this virus and the numbers, because I know they're out to get Trump. They have been since 2016, and they're just any way they can. They don't care if they burn the house down to get Trump. The house they're living in, it's fine with them. Now, this may have been, back to the virus, this may have been an act of war. It may have been a contagion that was started in bats and propagated by the Chi-Coms and put out there, and the Chi-Coms, they buy up all the masks and gloves and stuff, and so they can treat their own people, and they do it in the Chinese New Year, so all New Year the people going to Italy can travel to Italy and blah 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 blah. But here's the deal. Projections by the heavily influenced CDC, by the Chi-Coms, I know you don't believe this, but it's true, gave initial reports of 60 million people dying. Okay? And they just laid it all out there. Just, here you go, 60 million people. You know, I mean, that's a suicide thing right there. Oh, okay, well, the asteroid's coming to the Earth. I might as well kill myself. And it turned out to be 60,000 dead. And we don't really know a real good figure yet because everything's still skewed. You know, here's the thing. In the playbook, I know that the socialists never let a crisis go to waste. And they're not letting this one go to waste either. And so I want to show you these two things first and let you look at them. I'll give you a couple of minutes to look at this. But essentially this is it's a little think tank deal that Skipper Gates had put together, and Skip and the rest of his offshore holders or offshore account holders had put this together in the event that there was a epidemic. And this was done, I think it was put on here in November. I think this was done in October, and it's called Event 201. So if you just look up Skip Gates Event 201, that's Bill Gates, but I just, yeah, and you'll see you won't believe this until you look at it. Look at it and check it out and see if it looks anything familiar to you. So they use hogs instead of bats, and they use instead of Italy, they use Portugal, and of course America's in it, and the Chi-Coms, and yeah, you just got to see it. You got to see it. And here's the second one. You can just type in what is Skip Gates afraid of, and it's this deal about he's afraid of a pandemic. And this was done all the way back in 2015. So here's my thoughts on this. So the Skipper and his merry band of secret offshore account holders run this scam on the American people, and what this is I'm not quite sure why, and this is a stab at it. He's not able to, and they're not able to, with all their billions of dollars, colonize Mars or the moon. I knit you snot. I'm telling you, they have the idea that they're going to colonize Mars or the moon because we're destroying the Earth, and we're not going to be able to survive and blah blah blah. So and none of this is proven. This is all conjecture. But the thing is he found out that it's not going to happen. So let's get a think tank together and let's figure this out. What are we going to do? Well, I tell you what, in the name of environmentalism, what we'll do is we'll come up with a virus, and we'll have the Chinese. The Chinese are good at viruses because they live in these crazy, terrible circumstances, and a lot of the people are ignorant and don't know, and they have these bats and whatever, skunks and whatever they eat, bears and stuff like that. So we can get a virus out there that'll come from a bat or something like that, and we'll see if we can't kill as many people as we can. oh, wait a second. And we'll hold the cure, so we'll make money at it too. All right, that's great. So the left, or maybe because Skipper is part of the left, got together with him, or maybe it's a never let a crisis go to waste opportunity where the left said, "Hey, we got a great plan. We'll just scam the people into staying inside, ruining the country, and we'll blame it all on Trump. And we'll get Trump out of office. Why do they want Trump out of office so bad? Why can't they do it the normal way? Why can't they do it the normal way? Well, because they don't have a candidate to run in November. What do you mean they don't have a candidate? They've got Biden. Biden went off his nut. Biden has dementia. If you listen to him lately, the cat's almost 80 years old, if he isn't over 80. You know, I don't care about this fondling of women 27 years ago, whatever. I imagine Trump was doing the same thing. Hell, if I was a billionaire, I'd be fondling women, wouldn't you? That was a bad joke, but, you know, these days you can't do that at all. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to upset anything. These days you can't say that. You'll get your ass handed to you. But back in the day, back in the 80s, I guess it was okay. Hey, yeah. You know, Bernie's out. You know, they can't have a outright communist there. Plus, he's not going to make it. You know, 2 stints and a heart attack. And waving his hand and spritzing all over everybody. The Brooklyn Spritzer isn't going to make it, you know. He ain't only going to live another year or so. Red in the face and blood pressure up and stuff. And nobody's going to like Mike, so Mike's out. And, of course, Bloomberg gave all his money to Biden, who went insane. Or full Alzheimer's, I should say. I shouldn't say insane. So, you know, we got to have a new candidate. Who are we going to have for a candidate? Well, geez, we're going to have to run... God, I don't know. God, we're going to have to run Fredo. Oh my God, if we run Fredo, he'll get killed by Trump. Well, we're going to have to run Fredo and we'll really ruin the economy for Trump. And then we can blame the economy on Trump and Fredo will get elected. And I mean Fredo by Governor Cuomo of New York. Incidentally, the epicenter of where the outbreak was. You know, 66% of the coronavirus, so say, hospitalizations in New York, they were told to stay at home, and they were done at home instead of being outside in the sunlight, where the UV rays could do that, do their deal on the virus, and you know. He just discovered the other day that UV light kills the virus. Shit, this is 2 weeks after Donald Trump was torn apart for his comments on the very same thing. So you've got Team Virus, who it's not the media. It's not the media. It is, I swear to God, it's Team Virus. That's who it is. It used to be Team Obama. Team Obama, Ben Biden, but it's Team Virus now. The media is nothing but a bunch of socialists. Look, man, liberal Democrats think they're morally superior and intellectually superior to everybody. And they destroy us with their intellectual superiority because they possess neither. I can't believe Americans are so gullible and eat this stuff up. New York's going to be locked down until May 15th, and I'll bet he'll extend it 2 weeks. It'll be August before it's open. I don't know. And you know, he couldn't close a public transport, and it's a huge factor, in my opinion, to the virus in New York, because everyone traveled on those little trains and buses, all packed up together, spritzing all over each other. And he couldn't do that because of the essential workers took the buses and the transport. Look, folks, here's the deal: is I've been out and working, and I don't wear a mask and I don't wear gloves, and I don't. Of course, I come from a red state. You know, the blue states, you have I don't know, something like 60% chance higher dying in a blue state than you do a red state from this virus. And it's because people aren't informed. Is this virus real? Yeah, it's out there. And yeah, I could get it. But I don't think I'm going to, because I think the numbers are skewed. And I think this is all done. Why? This is all done? Come on, you can answer the question. To get Trump, because the left went nuts when he won in 2016. Hey, that's my opinion. Y'all have a great day. See ya.